Okay, folks, back again, really roasting in my car. I had to, I finished up my day at my current workplace, and basically had to let them know that had to run. I didn't really tell them, obviously what I'm going for. Um, but what else? I had the interview. I guess it was scheduled from 4 to 4:30. Went about 21 minutes in, and closed up on that. I asked them, some questions. I showed that I'm interested. I asked them some of my sort of favorite questions to ask, which is like, okay, what's your favorite part of the job? What's the next steps in the process? Some of the stuff my dad has sort of coached me on in the past. Like, oh, here's top interview questions to ask the interviewers to put yourself in sort of the best light, if you will. Again, another reason why I'm kind of at that point in my life where I think I sort of realized, okay, this is the stuff you got to sort of appreciate from having your dad around, that sort of thing, and be able to do that sort of stuff. But dovetailing back to basically what went down, I got sort of, I don't know, I think I got, I'd say I'm erring on the positive side, like 60 to 75% positive, but I could just be sort of interpreting things. There's sort of that prism of like wanting to look at things from the angle of the glass half empty, possibly. Maybe it's because I grew up in the Midwest, and you think about like how Minnesotans talk and thing. It's like, oh, it could be worse, or can't complain, that sort of thing, like that attitude where I'm just looking at it like that because I don't know, like they didn't seem all lit up, but then again, it could have been because it's end of the work day, and maybe they've had a really long day, and it's kind of like, okay, you two are interviewing our next prospective candidate at 4, and they're just like thinking like they'd probably rather just be hopping in their car and heading home, whereas they gotta sit there for an extra half an hour and talk to some random person. And I'll definitely have that question of, if I don't get selected, okay, like how can I make myself a better candidate in the future? What's some stuff I could do? Should I get certified with this or certified with that? They asked me questions about like troubleshooting machines or processes, and the best one I could come up with was basically like having to go through the software system for the manufacturing execution system, which from what I understand, it's a kind of a generic name for it, but different companies have their own versions of it. But essentially, like, I had to go through this system that they had at my old company to locate an indexing plate for our NGS workflow, the sample prep, and essentially make sure it's in the right bucket so that the automated system could go ahead and do its run. I have heard the term manufacturing execution system used by other companies. Obviously, there's different makers of these software packages. Some of them, like, I think Solario is one of them. But essentially, I had to go through that, and that was my example of some troubleshooting where I didn't just sit there and wait for the supervisor to go and have to do all the work. Once I had the supervisor teach me how to do that, I was able to do that on my own. So that was an example I gave of that. The example I gave to answer the question of like what is the time I've gone above and beyond. I remember this is back when the pandemic was at its height, was really in full tilt. There's a lot of research going on towards therapeutics, towards a vaccine, etc. And we were involved with supporting that. And I basically offered to come in extra hours. I was pulling 60-hour weeks to get those genes out to the customers because they were using those to do research. Us getting those out to them would speed up their research. So I talked about that. I came in to help with that sort of stuff. And obviously I'm hoping that if if they do end up contacting my health supervisor, I mean, he said he would give, best recommendations ever for, anyone and everyone. So I'm hoping he, would do that under these circumstances, because if they do reach out to him, and that would probably be, honestly, that would be at that point where it was almost a formality to, ask for references. It'd be like, okay, where was he taking this guy? Just fill out the paperwork, and check this off, check that off. Give us a few names to call, and we'll have the reference folks, check up on your background or whatever. Like if I was at that point, I'd probably be like 75 to 80%, maybe even 90% in the bucket for getting the position. But yeah, I wasn't feeling they were like super enthusiastic. But then, like, it could be anything. I mean, they're still in startup phase, so for all I know, they're having to wear 5 or 6 different hats every day, and they're just like, having to juggle all sorts of stuff, and they could just be worn out, So it doesn't necessarily have to be myself that's, at fault for anything. I'm not saying that anything is, funky, but that was sort of my first actual interview I ever got for a research position, a research associate. So, I talked about a lot about wanting to move into supporting research, and it was kind of hard to sort of pick a favorite area, something that was interesting to me. But I went with the guy's example of bacterial strain engineering, because that is some of what we did at Twist at my old company to a certain extent. Obviously, anyone who knows me well enough could probably find out where I used to work, but I'm not working there anymore, so it's not so much of a sensitive topic per se. But it's not like I'm on here ranting and raving all sorts of nonsense or whatever. But anyways, that's my paranoia. I don't know why I should be so paranoid, because I mean, unless I went into some sort of public office, it would be something else, not something I'm interested in. But anyways, I said I would be really interested in that, even though, the whole DNA and GS stuff does really interest me as well, sequencing the DNA, but leaning a little more towards that, especially with my chemical engineering background. So, those are some of the questions I got. What else? I did ask them about what their typical days like, and I did mention that I have some exposure to Python and Jump as well. So I'm hoping to self-teaching if need be to like learn more stuff that I can help out with this or that. And I had an example of a time I was working in an interdisciplinary situation. I'm not really sure if it's entirely to their liking, but the example was having a labeling machine go down, and I was the one who went and wrote the ticket, contacted the service engineers. Popo up here. I want to keep my phone down so don't get pulled over. But and I gotta keep an eye on things. But anyways, I had to contact the service engineer folks and give them the detailed description of what had happened, any like possible causes, and then when the service engineer showed up the next day, we basically sort of troubleshot, I guess would be the next way of putting it. We did some troubleshooting of the machine and figured out it was the power supply that was the issue. So because I went through the instrument manual, and I wish I kind of mentioned this sort of stuff in the interview, but wasn't really sure what to expect as far as questions were concerned. But I giving more detailed description, I went through the instrument manual and found out how to replace that part. So because we needed that for printing out labels for our COVID-19 testing kits, and trying to get as many of those out to the customer as possible to essentially help people as much as we can in tracking the spread of COVID, so proper responses can be made to mitigate it, and hopefully as soon as possible stop the spread. So I gave that as an example. Again, I'm not sure if that's really to their liking. I mean, they may have wanted something more like, oh, here's a problem I had of the PCR process, and you know, etc., etc. But, you know, again, this is my first time interviewing for something like this. If somebody were to ask me, you know, again, like if I was in the future, let's say next 6 months, assuming I didn't get the position that I interviewed for another one, I'd have a little more of an idea. Because, you know, when they list it as like research associate, it's like, okay, like, am I doing research? And then, of course, you kind of find out that no, actually, what we're really having you do is more like, almost like being a laboratory assistant to some professor, and they have their experiment designed, and they want someone who, you know, is really good with pipetting, and, you know, of course understands some of the science behind it, and perhaps, you know, knows how to take the data on, let's say, a thumbstick drive, one of those flash drives, and, you know, plug that into the USB port on their laptop, take the data in a CSV file, let's say, and then writing a Python script to go and, you know, visualize that so they can go and say, okay, here's what's going on in this chemical process or this biological process or this, you know, electromechanical process, you know, that sort of thing. And being able to have someone there, you can sort of do sort of the, I guess, I mean, it's kind of like grunt work, but do that sort of grunt work so that they can do more of the, you know, analysis themselves, so they don't have to sit there and, you know, do the number crunching. You know, if you do the number crunching for them, format everything, etc. And yeah, so I mean, again, it's my first time interviewing for a position like this. I am trying to sort of keep things on the down low with the current workplace, just so I can, you know, hold down the job, because at the, you know, the very least, like I said in the past, you know, hold down the job I have right now, and, you know, in many ways, at the same time that I'm doing that, I'm sort of figuring my way forward. You know, it may mean getting a master's degree, which either way, I'm pursuing that. You know, to begin with, like, you know, period, end of story. Like, that's what I'm going for. Whether I get, you know, a research position or I get promoted to, you know, engineer for this or that, I'm getting that master's, period. But if that master's is, as it turns out, is the key, well, then I'll also have that as well. So even if I don't get hired for a research associate position, whether it's at a startup or at some bigger company, you know, I'm really sending out my feelers to kind of get an idea as to, like, what it is that, you know, they want someone who's an RA to do. Because again, it's sort of like you know, so you go to college, you get that engineering degree or that science degree, and maybe you don't necessarily have an idea of what really is the outside world like, you know. I mean, if I believed everything that I was, you know, told to believe in engineering school as far as engineering or chemical engineering is concerned, and you know, heck, if pardon my language, but heck, if that was the way the real world was, I mean, and you know, for some people, they do have to apply these sorts of things, but it's almost like, you know, you study enough of it, and that's kind of going off of what, you know, an engineer like once told me. Told, you know, a group of us, was that when he graduated, it almost felt like he was more of a plumber than an engineer, because it was all about learning about these different types of piping and their diameters, their dimensions, what piping went with what. You know, it was kind of like, okay, am I trying to become an engineer, or am I trying to become, you know, a glorified plumber, you know, sort of a thing. Then, you know, you graduate, you get out there, and it's like, okay, here's what it's actually like, you know. Maybe you should have taken a couple of classes in Python, or maybe you should have, I don't know, gotten some, you know, tutorials from Mettler Toledo on how to pipette, you know, getting those kind of certifications. Or maybe, you know, if you'd known, again, you know, so much of this is based on, do you know what actually is going on in the industry, what it's really like, all that, which you obviously try to get an exposure to through internships. But you know, maybe you would have gone and learned how to program these robots, you know. And it's sort of ironic, because, you know, you study all this math and science, and you get out there and it's like, okay, so you want to make 80, 90, 100K a year, just push this button, pull that lever, take this, you know, plastic plate over here and put it in this area. Make sure that green light never turns red, and you'll have a paycheck every 2 weeks practically. No, it's almost like that. And a lot of the systems that end up being used, it's all proprietary. So it's not just some class at university you could take, and even if you wanted to take this stuff while you're in university, it's like you'd have to have $2,500 sitting there just waiting for you to spend it on, a 4 to 5 day course. And I mean, you don't know unless you contact them, okay, how much do I need to know beforehand? How proficient do I need to be at, coding or understanding code, or just the system in general before I can go and take the class and get that certification, So, there's a lot more to it than I previously thought. And again, this is sort of a learning experience right now. Just trying to sort of figure out what it really takes. And okay, I hope that person slows down because I just braked. Okay, cool. Man, I don't know if it's California itself or it's just the world, but it just seems like there's a lot of really bad drivers out there. And I'm saying this as I'm sitting here vlogging as I drive, and no, I don't have some holder set up so I can have my both hands free. But I'm making it a point to pay attention to the road. At least I'm telling myself that. But and there I go looking at the camera. It's like, yeah, it's on, it's recording. It's on, it's recording. Now focus on driving. Like I'm being OCD about, okay, is the camera on? Even if, well, not really, but anyways, what else? What else did they ask me? Well, I kind of give my introduction, and I focused on more what I did at the old company because it was really way more relevant. They did ask me why I switched out, and I, off the top of my head, the best answer I could come up with was saying that I wanted to get some experience or perspective on the upstream, end of the workflow process, making reagents. But that, why I would be interested in leaving Garden was basically getting involved in research, supporting research, which I did try to make an emphasis on using the word support because a research associate, like I said, I mean, as much as you do data analysis and you're using scripting or using a software program or doing the actual lab work, much as you might be doing that, you're not the scientist. It's kind of like, to get back to sort of the university example, you have sort of the PI or the principal investigator, the PhD holding professor or a researcher. It could be could just be a postdoctoral researcher, and I'm not saying, I'm using the word just to sort of demean anything like that. I know some people might interpret it as such, but might be a postdoctoral researcher, might be a person who's a professor, tenured, or maybe they're not tenured, but they've done enough years at the university that the university's essentially approved their research grants and has allocated laboratory space and equipment for them to use, and so they're the person in charge of that lab, and you're sort of like a research assistant. Maybe it means pulling late nights, maybe it means working on the weekends, but you're essentially running their experiments for them and making sure they have the data collected and everything's sort of in tip-top shape, running smoothly so that they can get their research done. So that's what an RA seems to be from what I'm seeing. And because so much of the struggle really hasn't been at this point hasn't been necessarily getting the experience or getting the knowledge per se, but being able to market myself. And I think that's something that a lot of the folks who I went to college with, some of them who were friends of mine, and I wanted to try and help them out, I tried to share some of my knowledge with them. Others who were just ticked off at me for being able to do that. A lot of the sort of knowledge gap really for them and as well for myself. I mean, even at this point still, I kind of have that, but just not knowing how to market yourself. Like, you could be the best plumber in the world, the best electrician, but if you don't know how to put that out there to the world and let people know who are looking for a great plumber or a great electrician to fix whatever problem, I mean, like I say, you could be the best at your job, but if people don't know because perhaps either they don't have access to the information or you just don't know how to get the information out there in a way that, catches their attention and makes them go, oh, we want this guy on our team, or we want this guy working for us, or we should hire that person. Look, at they got, Better Business Bureau review, 5 out of 5 stars, 273 reviews saying this guy's the best at his job. Hire him, he'll have your problem fixed in no time and at half the cost or whatever, unless you have that sort of thing figured out, I mean, you could be the best at what you do, but you're not going to get the kind of headway that you would if you knew how to really market yourself. And figuring out how to do that is kind of like what I'm going through right now. Anyways, all the while trying to, hold down my job and take care of my class, my grades, because at the very least, I gotta make a headway in that. So whether it's through graduate school or just work experience, I can branch out. But anyways, again, I'm not feeling 150% enthusiastic. I'll probably be calling my dad and telling him about things and seeing how things go. And I given that I did get a bite back, I may go back and apply for some more positions at the other companies, or even apply for some other positions at the same company. Again, trying to see like who bites, who contacts me back, and I'll take it at the very least as an opportunity to learn. Like I said, earlier, like if they come back and say, sorry, we decided to move forward with somebody else, I'd respond just, asking, okay, like, how could I make myself a better candidate in the future? Because, again, like, I know that, if the job basically is, okay, we got this experiment, we need you to run this for us, take these cells and, put this DNA in them, essentially, and then culture it up and go and collect the cells, and then, further on the process, do purification, extraction and purification of the DNA, and then or the compounds they're making, whatever, collecting data, doing data analysis. If that's really what it is, then it's kind of like, okay, I'll be sure to include that in my resume in the future, especially like on LinkedIn in the sort of description section where it's like, okay, you have a little blurb about yourself, talking about like, okay, what are your strong points and what are your passions, and where are your main knowledge areas, if you will, what can you consider yourself a subject matter expert on, and that sort of deal. And you know what, I've also kind of thought about almost like applying for a research position at the old company. As I've done this, I've thought about going back to there. Again, depending on how the company's doing. If they're really growing, even though their stock price hasn't been doing that great as of late, but if they are growing enough, they could even take me on for like 6 months or so. So like at least they'd be like, hey, I did some research associate work. I'll go for it, especially since I do have a lot of friends at the old company, and people I worked with, and able to click with them. Hey, I was able to click with them well enough to stay there for over a year and and not get fired. So yeah, so we'll have to see about that. Again, I'll have to look into what my options are, but what else Well, tonight I got one last problem to do for that homework assignment. I'm going to try to get everything formatted up and then submit it tonight, and do my sort of final review for the quiz. Just looking back through all the slides and the notes and everything, because I mean, don't want to go into this, quiz like not prepared or underestimating it, because I've never had this professor for any classes. I've heard people like say pros and cons, pluses and minuses. Some people, you say had that Rate My Professor website where they will give a sterling review saying, "Oh, this guy's the best professor ever." 10 out of 10 would totally take classes with him again. And you have the other person who's like 1 out of 5. Everybody agrees. Worst professor ever. Would totally not take classes with this guy again. Worst experience of my life. Blah 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 sort of thing. So, yeah, I think that's probably most of my evening will be those two things. But yeah, I mean, I have had experience. I remember like back when I was applying for that first job, the first actual job out of college, and I mean, I had my share of interviews where like I didn't get a offer, or what else? There was this one place where they're a biotech company, but they were more like involved with medical testing. But it turned out that I was one of the top picks for the position, but they got back to me like 2.5 months later, and it was like, there was a position or time where it was like, I gotta get a job in biotech or pharmaceuticals, something like that. I have to get something where I'm getting some real world hands-on experience, and I mean, heck, I need to be making money, and I couldn't wait. And the other company was like, it was almost like you got two girls, and like this girl who's like, like the one-eyed girl. Oh, you don't know, she's lukewarm, she's this, she's that, she's back and forth. Some days she's acting like she's totally into you, and she's like, practically grinding on you, and then the next day she's like, nowhere to be found, or completely ignoring you, or she's, doing that to some other guy in public, no less. And then there's the other girl who's like, just all up in your grill, like, obviously totally into you, that sort of thing. And it's kind of like, well, it's almost like if you could detach the fact that it's, a human being, we're talking about, romance, or physical, relations. You could take that out of the picture and look at it kind of like that. It's like, well, which girl are you going to go for? If it's just about having a girl who's, attractive and, really into you, has genuine desire for you, all that, like, so it's like, well, which girl are you going to go for? The girl is wasting your time, just wants your attention, perhaps wants to use you to get the other guy jealous, who's, the guy that she actually wants. Or are you going to go for the girl who's like, would drop everything, who, to be with you, or would crawl over broken glass or over barbed wire, or isn't gonna put you through hell, which girl are you gonna go for? It's almost like that. So, I went for the other company that was like, within a week later was like, this guy's hired, we want him to come work for us. We'd like to extend this offer to you, da 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 da. And it was like, at the time, it's kind of funny because, 60 to 70K in between there. Maybe some people that'd be like, that's just peanuts, man. It's just peanuts. You need to ask for more. Or you need to, but at that point in my life, like 60 to 70K a year, especially with the opportunity for overtime, man, that was a lot of money. I was like more money than I'd ever had that was like in my name, or the possibility of me being able to earn that, especially given that over the last year, I made 6 figures, and it was just like, wow, I made that kind of money. Yeah, most of it went to either taxes or debt, with minimum being used to cover cost of living. But all that being said, I mean, we'll have to see what's coming on the pipeline. We'll see how the things go. I mean, I'm at the very least going to be asking more questions about about what it would really take. And I get the position, and even if it's not sort of the ideal sort of thing, I mean, I would at least try to last 6 months to a year, because that would then move me into sort of another sector of things where I'd be able to actually apply to other companies, whether around here or elsewhere, where it's like, okay, you're not just some grunt, working manufacturing, which, I told them I want to sort of get out of manufacturing and expand into research, supporting research. So that was kind of like that was my central reason, getting to that next level. So, anyways, man, traffic is slower than I thought it was going to be, but it's another half an hour video, and for all I know, it may take 24 hours to upload. So, I'm going to stop recording now. I'm almost near my my exit to the next freeway, which will then lead me to the final exit that I need to take to get home. So I'm going to stop recording now, and probably start uploading once I'm parked at home. So I will see you folks around. Thanks for watching. I really hope things work out for the best. And I don't mean that in generic sense. I mean, it'd be great to get this position, but again, bare minimum is hold down the current job and do well in my class, and continue to do that, rinse and repeat until I'm in graduate school and I'm out of debt. So anywho, see you folks around. Thanks for watching. Bye.